Welcome to episode 34 of Roll, Play, Grow, the podcast for tabletop entrepreneurs, creators, and fans. I am Courtney Stover of Lightheart Adventures, and in this podcast, we talk to the creators behind the brands and the tabletop roleplay gaming space about who they are and how they are turning their passion for gaming into a career. It's been a while since we had a maker on the show, and I am very excited about today's guest, Katlyn Sol, one half of the Arcane Spectacles team. If you aren't familiar with Arcane Spectacles, they make spell trackers, potion bottles that include D4s, dice vaults, and more cool D&D and Pathfinder accessories. I actually have a spell tracker and potion bottle myself, and I love them both. That potion bottle is really fun to pass around to my players and is definitely seeing a lot of usage these days as I lead them through Curse of Strahd. If you aren't sure what a spell tracker is, it is a great way to both organize your dice and give you a visual and tactile way to keep track of your character's spell slots at every level. It's definitely going to come in handy when my players finally decide to take down Strahd. Or try to, anyway. Katlyn tells the amazing journey that she and her partner have taken to bring Arcane Spectacles to where it is today, including how they started out, going over some amazing Kickstarter planning advice, how they navigated a recent rebrand, and more. She is a delightful person, and I know that by the end, you'll want to be best friends with her too. Before we jump in, if this is your first time tuning into the show, welcome. This podcast is a part of Lightheart Adventures, which is a small company that I co-founded with my husband. We offer a weekly blog on our website where you'll find tips for running games, free monthly one-shot adventures, product reviews, and more. You'll find that blog at lightheartadventures.com. Brenton also creates beautiful dungeon maps both on DM's Guild and on a commission basis. He's currently working on creating a map pack for every chapter of Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and we've got a few live already. You can find those by going to dmsguild.com and searching for Lightheart Adventures as the author, or by going to lightheartadventures.com/shop to find all our DM's Guild and Drive-Thru RPG publications in one spot. Some other ways you can support me and the show are via our Patreon page, which has a few different tracks depending on whether you'd like maps and adventures or tailored content for this podcast, including contributing questions for upcoming guests, a spotlight on our website, and even a shout out on the podcast. You can also check out our affiliates like Friday Afternoon Tea. Friday just released her fall teas, and one of my favorites of the seasonal teas is the pumpkin chai. Honestly, though, I really enjoyed all the teas in that sample pack. The pumpkin rooibos is also very delicious. If you also want these teas or want to try any others of her very large assortment of nerdy teas, go to fridaytea.com and enter in code LIGHTHEARTADV to receive 10% off your order and help support this show. That is all for now, so please sit back and enjoy this conversation with Katlyn. I am super excited to now introduce you all to Katlyn Sol, one half of the talented folks behind Arcane Spectacles. Hello, Katlyn. How are you today?
I am fantastic. How are you?
Good. I cannot say how excited I am to have this conversation with you today. It's going to be great.
Awesome. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's go ahead and kick things off. Can you tell us a bit about who you are and how you got into gaming?
Absolutely. So my name is Katlyn, and I'm one half of Arcane Spectacles, so I run it with my husband Jared, and the two of us who've been gaming for a little while. I really didn't know much about anything D&D, TTRPG, anything related when I was growing up, and Jared kind of did, off and on, played kind of. And he was trying to get me into it, and he's like, you should watch Critical Role. And I'm like, oh, sure. And I watched like the first season, a couple episodes, and I wasn't 100% sure about it. And then I got addicted, and then I'm like, now we have to play. And then it pretty much kind of went from there, which I think is kind of a common thing for a lot of people starting in the Critical Role world and then coming to find their own love for everything that's TTRPG and realizing that it's such a vast and amazing and wonderful world with a lot of variety. So we kind of spawned into that, and then the love for that then we cultivated into growing a business, creating TTRPG accessories, and that's been a blast.
Yeah. Are you playing in any campaigns right now?
Currently not. We were playing one with some friends, and then with COVID world, we did some online sessions, and then life's just been getting really busy, getting kind of back to somewhat normalcy-ish, adjacent, but we just haven't been able to jump back into that home campaign. But once we do, I'm so excited because I feel like my poor character is just so neglected in the back burner, and I just really want to play her again. So we're definitely pushing for it. I'm really excited to get that going, hopefully soon.
Yeah, that's fair. It has definitely been a weird couple of years.
Yes.
At this point.
And time, it just doesn't exist anymore.
Oh my gosh, yeah. All the time I say something very similar. I'm just, time means nothing.
Yes, 100%.
Well, cool. So can you go ahead and tell us about what Arcane Spectacle is?
Yes, absolutely. So we bring adventurers a bunch of different TTRPG accessories. We make all sorts of things. Our most well-known things that we make are usually our trackers. So we make spell trackers for Pathfinder and D&D. We just recently transitioned. We just recently got a laser engraver, and so we've been kind of transitioning into that world. Before, we were doing a lot with 3D printed products. And we still do a little bit of that, but we're trying to transition away into this brand new world that we're in. But yes, we make a lot of those types of things. We make health potions or like greater healing potions that have all the D4s already in them. So you just roll them out. We make different like mugs and some pride related items and kind of a little bit of all sorts of stuff. But the tracker stuff is definitely most what we're known for. It's kind of our flagship product, you could say. And it's been fun kind of expanding that. We started just with the spell tracker, and then we've got health trackers and armor trackers, and we're working on some other trackers as well that eventually we'll be able to officially release. And it's been really great. It kind of started as just this thing that we made to help ourselves in our own campaign, and we're like, this is kind of cool. And I had this Etsy shop that I made handmade wands and I sold. And I'm like, I'll just like throw these spell trackers up and see if anybody likes them. And then people really liked them. And it just kind of spawned this amazing, wonderful business from there. And we've just kind of tackled it and just tried to keep up with the orders and all the things. And it's been really great.
Okay, I definitely want to dig into those origins a little bit more.
Absolutely.
So please tell us all about that.
Yeah, so I guess square one, I had an Etsy shop I would make, or I occasionally make. I actually should make more of them now that I'm just thinking about it. But I used to make these handmade wands, kind of like Harry Potter wands. And I was selling those, and I've kind of been a crafter my whole life. And I'm one of those that kind of obsesses over one project area, whether that's knitting and then switching to crocheting and then switching to making terrain out of materials for D&D, or I don't know, whatever I do, I seem to kind of just like go all in and get obsessed for a few months, and then I usually kind of switch it around. So whole life been a kind of a crafter, and my husband Jared's like, you do all these crafts, like you should just put them up on Etsy, and if people buy them, they buy them. And so I kind of started doing that with the wands, and then that's when we eventually made our spell tracker, which was really awesome because we were both working together to create something, which was really nice. So our spell tracker, we wanted to fit in the use of being able to track your spells, as well as having an area to store your regular dice that you would roll, as well as an additional area where you could spell dice for a specific spell. I personally like to put my fireball dice in that little square spot on the side. Other people like to put extra dice or things. And so we really worked on creating that just for our own use. That's when we kind of decided to put that on that Etsy shop, and it's been really fun.
Yeah. How did you go about actually creating that first one? Like, did you have a 3D printer already, or were you doing it by hand?
So I did buy, I think I bought it for him for Christmas. I think I got Jared a 3D printer, and he was doing some 3D printed terrain stuff for D&D, like all sorts of things, some minis, some fences, some tables, sort of stuff. And one of our players in our campaign, she was very new, didn't know anything about D&D, and she decided to play a bard. And she was just really, really struggling with the whole concept of spells and what spell slots are and what you do with them and how you track them. And she was just, really struggling. So we're like, well, I bet we could create something. And we're like, we have this new toy. We might as well see if we can try to make something 3D printed that would really help her out. And so then lots and lots and lots of prototypes and changes. And anytime you're figuring out any new machine, that's always an adventure. Luckily, Jared's very good at the computer stuff. So he was able to, prototype it out and on his software in Fusion. And we were able to actually put something that was in our minds into like a physical product, which was it's always a wonderful feeling when you can dream something up and then see it form into reality before you. It's a really great experience. And so we created it and we gave it to her, and she was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I finally understand how to do spells. I think the tactile version, I guess, of being able to change the dice to count down once you use your spells, and you're always having a visual representation of the spell slots you have. I think it's very beneficial for a lot of players.
Yeah, I have one of your trackers myself that I got for my birthday earlier this year, and it has been game-changing. It's been really fun.
That is so wonderful. I know. When I was making it, I was like, I know who this is going to.
Well, cool. So, yeah, I would love to learn about, when you decided that you want to try selling these. So you started by putting it onto Etsy, correct?
Correct. We did because I had that Etsy shop, and we just kind of decided to do that. And we thought, hey, let's make a Twitter account and post it on Twitter and hashtag D&D all the way. And we ended up having a post that just kind of caught on, and it got a ton of retweets, a ton of everything. And we grew a ton of followers that day. And it was the craziest thing because we're very casually started at the beginning, we're just like, oh, we'll put it up there and see how it goes. And I distinctively remember that one day, it was a Saturday morning, I think, I'm pretty sure. And then we posted it on Twitter, and all of a sudden I had my phone on, and if you don't know, if you have Etsy and you get a sale, it makes this like cha-ching noise. It's the most satisfying noise ever. So we're just, hanging out that morning, and all of a sudden it's like cha-ching, and then like 5 minutes later, cha-ching, and we're like, what the heck is going on? And so then we're checking Twitter, and our post is blowing up, and we're getting all these orders, and we're like, oh my gosh, we thought maybe we'd sell one of these things, and now we've got 10 orders. It was a pretty great first day.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of where it started. And then, sometimes Twitter can be a grind, but it's also lovely. And we've met so many amazing, wonderful people. I think we are so lucky to have landed in this D&D TTRPG space because it's just filled with amazing, wonderful, supportive, amazing people who we've become very close with, really good friends with. And I think that's been one of the most fulfilling things. And it helps also keep us motivated to keep the grind going, because sometimes you just have to grind it out, and that's okay. It's still lovely. Just have to work through it.
Yeah, you can definitely be like the most creative person in the world and love what you're doing, and just have days that you just don't want to.
It's so true, but it's still fun.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm curious about really anytime that someone is going to try selling a new craft. And so I feel as though you've been through this a lot over the years as you've shifted what it is that you're going to try selling. Mm-hmm. But I'm always just curious on when you're first starting out, like, What is the decision process that you went through for how much inventory you wanted to make at the beginning? Like, how are you going to justify the amount of money that you're spending on materials before you have any sales? I'm just really curious about that whole process.
Yes, that 100% to this day is still probably the most challenging thing by far, especially in 3D printed world. One of our trackers to print them on one of our 3D printers that we now have, it takes about 8 hours. So it's pretty rough if you're having to do a bunch of orders all at once and you're having to start from scratch to print them all, especially because 3D printers tend to just decide to not work randomly. You're constantly doing maintenance on them. They're constantly, little things are going wrong with them. It print completely fine one time, and then the next time you print it, everything goes wrong. You're like, what happened? I didn't change anything. So that's a fun thing to tackle. So definitely the inventory to start out ahead of time was pretty rough to figure out, especially because we do a lot of personalized trackers. So if people pay for personalization, we put their name on it. And at the end, we like hand paint all of our letters and everything. And so I really like that process. Every single one kind of feels very special, especially the personalized ones. But the biggest issue and hardest thing with that is you can't make them ahead of time. And I would say about 70% probably of the products that we make are personalized, which is definitely a rough situation to be in because you're just essentially having to sit on the inventory of your material and you're just having to wait for that sale to come in and then you have to start the making process. That tends to be where we sit, which kind of makes the decision of how much inventory do you keep on hand pretty easy because we don't keep the personalized stuff. But that being said, when we first started out and we didn't offer the personalization, I'm pretty sure we just started with 5 of each of them just to keep on hand. And then as we've grown, we've kind of upped that number. And then we ran a Kickstarter and we actually made all of our trackers out of hardwood, which was a super fun process. We worked with one of our friends who's local here. We'd go over to his shop and he'd kind of, I guess, show us the ropes and we kind of just threw ourselves into making those. And because we're using our friend's shop, we had to keep all that inventory on hand ahead of time, which was, it's a very stressful thing because you're like, well, maybe we could just kind of do once a month, make an order of what we need. And then all of a sudden, Purple Heart's selling really popularly. And you're like, man, I need more Purple Heart. And then you go make a bunch of Purple Heart. And then all of a sudden, Black Walnut's selling more. And I find that it tends to really coincide with what you're promoting on social medias, which makes sense. So I think my biggest advice is to always have a plethora of items on hand in case all of a sudden you do get a huge influx of orders and you have to manage it. But at the same time, don't go crazy and don't be scared to put things on your shop that say, you know, it might take us 2 weeks to get you your product because a lot of people are willing to wait if it's a really good, high quality product. Definitely recommend that. And then also don't try to stress yourself out too much with keeping a lot of stuff on hand. Try to keep it manageable because that's the biggest way to lose money is to just have a bunch of inventory on hand that you can't push. And that was a lot of rambling of a lot of advice of a lot of different things because a lot of things come to mind. It's definitely a really hard thing to manage.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of really good advice.
Well, good.
Well, okay. I would love to just kind of learn about the evolution of your shop then. So that very first day, you got a whole bunch of orders in that you weren't necessarily expecting, and that was super exciting. But then just what happened then to lead into the Kickstarter? How did things change once you got to Kickstarter? Just walk us through the timeline.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we started with the Etsy world of, you know, just doing all the Etsy things and working on Etsy ads and setting all those things up and trying to balance how much money you're putting into ads to making sure that you're getting enough revenue back and making the time that it takes you to make each of those products worthwhile. I think sometimes when you first start on Etsy ads, you'll look at it and you'll be like, great, I spent, $20 on ads and I made $35. Like, that seems pretty great. I ended up getting more money than I got back, but some people underestimate the time that actually takes you to do the products of the things that sell. So you may only net $15, but you also have to put a bunch of hours of work into it. And so that's kind of a tough thing to manage, but highly recommend ads. They are really helpful, but you have to be careful with managing. I don't know. It's hard to research, what demographic you're going to go for, especially if you're going into other like Facebook ads and things like that. But utilizing ads and also just growing our Twitter following and making those connections with people in the community and really helped us grow. We started to sponsor a couple of Twitch streams. So we worked really closely, we still do, with Paradise RPG. They're amazing and lovely, and their stream is top-notch, high quality, super great. Every one of the players is awesome. So they were our first people that we started to partner with, and then since then we've gained some more people, and I think just having that community interaction has really helped us grow. And once we got a really good foundation and we were getting more consistent sales and it seemed to be forming into a legit business, we kind of have always had this dream of doing a Kickstarter. We're like, man, I just think that we have a really good idea here. I think it'd be really fun to make this stuff out of hardwood. So we did a ton of research, talked to our friend, and just kind of started prototyping. And we made a prototype and we made it in a couple different woods. And we just decided to launch down the track of figuring out what Kickstarter was. And that is a process and a half, but it was so much fun. It was crazy. It's so much work to put a Kickstarter together because you have to do all those prototypes. You have to take all your pictures. We had our friend actually from Paradise, his name's Sean. He made us this amazing video. We worked with No Nat Ones, and he made us another video as well. We helped put that all together, hyped it a bunch on Twitter, got a lot of our community members really hyped about it too. And it was great having their support, really helped push us to actually launching it. And Kickstarter is a crazy, crazy thing. And it's interesting. I've backed a lot of Kickstarters in my life. I think I'm up to like 65. I'm a very big fan of Kickstarter because it's awesome seeing people's amazing, cool ideas actually go from, step one to the end to actually a finished product. It's really awesome. And that first day launching, you tend to get the bulk of your backers usually on your first day and your last day. And so that first day, we're like, man, we really hope we reach our threshold. And I think we completely funded. I'm pretty sure it was like 21 minutes is when we completely funded, which was insane to us. It's crazy. Thinking back on just the feeling of knowing that other people really like what you did out there, and we funded and we kept pushing to get those backers. And by the end of it, it was awesome and wonderful and successful. And we celebrated and we took a couple days to just chill. And then we realized, man, we have so many of these orders that we now have to make and create, which is a wonderful, lovely problem to have. And then we had to, I guess, jump into production, which we had obviously done a lot smaller scale production previously. And we realized that when you start doing things on a larger scale, that there tends to be a lot more complications, especially at the time it was kind of getting more difficult for wood supply. So we're wanting to make all these trackers, and all of a sudden we can't get Paduke anymore. Then all of a sudden we can't get Purple Heart. And we're like, oh my gosh, we have all these promised backers. We said that we were going to, fulfill all these orders by a certain timeline, and we can't get this wood. And it was kind of a very crazy, stressful time. But you just keep pushing through it. And then all of a sudden the stars aligned. We got all our materials. We got all of our production line going. We had a couple of friends come to help us, and it was just really came together. And then you have to package all those lovely orders, which takes a lot of time, but it was lovely. You just listen to some podcasts and crank it out and get all your wonderful products to all your wonderful, amazing, supportive, wonderful backers. Super fun. So, from there, we were like, okay, well, we tackled our Kickstarter. What are we going to do now? And that's when we decided to work towards getting a laser engraver. So we actually just recently got that. That was about a month and a half ago. So that's our next project. And so we're just keeping striving forward, keeping to come up with new ideas. The best part and the most fun for us is prototyping. That is by far the most enjoyable thing. So right now we're living the dream because we're prototyping like crazy. So that's kind of, I guess, a general story of you just take what you have been given and the support that you've been given, and then you just try to keep expanding on your ideas and pushing forward and always thinking about the future and what you're wanting to do next. And if things are going well, just try to keep pushing that boulder every day to keep it rolling and just enjoy the time as you go.
What an amazing story. Hey, entrepreneurs. I love introducing you to new creators every episode, but I could really use your support. I would love to invite you to join our Patreon page, where you'll gain access to behind-the-scenes content, add your questions to upcoming interviews, and you could even receive a shout out on our site in an upcoming episode. To learn more, go to lightheartadventures.com/RPG. And now back to the show. I'm curious how your production process changed from before the Kickstarter, when you were doing the small batch, to after the Kickstarter, where, I mean, how many orders did you even have?
We had, I think it was about 250 backers.
Okay.
So many trackers. I'm terrible with numbers and remembering numbers exactly as far as how many trackers we had to make. But that was definitely, it was very interesting because all of a sudden we had all these pre-orders basically. So we knew exactly what we needed to achieve, but the hardest thing was achieving it. So we have this online software. I'm trying to remember what it's called. It will come to me eventually, but you basically have these little, it's kind of like sticky notes, and you have all these columns, and that is really pretty much how we lived life and stays organized. You just stick to the chart, stick to the plan. Luckily, Jared has he's a software engineer, and so they do a lot of things when they create software that helps them create software quickly, and every couple weeks you reevaluate and you're constantly changing with the ebb and flow of challenges that can come in. And so I think that knowledge really helped us stay grounded and centered and on task. And every time we had a challenge like supply chain issues, or, if a part broke back when we were doing this, if something went down for some particular reason, it could be weeks before you'd get your part in. So just, reevaluating your time and asking for help and paying for help if you need to really helped us. So that online tracking software really kept us organized as far as goals and things that we had too. So we had a goal to complete 50 trackers by this date, and then another 50 by this date. And then the hardest thing was to decide, what, do you get all the wood and then kind of do them in batches? Like, do we make all the Purple Heart trackers first? But we kind of didn't want to do that because a lot of our backers, if you just bought one tracker, then you just bought one of the color you liked the most. But if you were awesome and bought more than one tracker, a lot of times it wasn't like 5 Purple Hearts. And so we wanted to be able to batch orders in a way to where we could fulfill as many orders as possible. So we ended up kind of breaking up all of our woods and all the trackers and kind of the demand for them, and kind of looking at Excel charts and things like that to try to quickly produce and be able to fulfill as many orders as possible in the quickest amount of time, which was very challenging, but rewarding and great to work through. So that really changed our production tasks. So beforehand, we didn't really need to have a wall of sticky notes online to help us. You just would look at the orders that you had and you'd make them. And so I think it taught us a lot about organization being one of the absolute most important things that you need to do, as well as making sure that you're always writing down things that come to your mind. I always used my note app in my phone. Anytime I thought about something like, oh, I need to make sure I buy this, or oh, this person needs to change their address, so I need to make sure and confirm that that happened and everything. So I would just write myself a bunch of notes. And then eventually all those notes would turn into sticky notes. And then you just make sure things get done. And that for sure really super helped us. And we fulfilled on time, minus like 10 trackers, which because Purple Heart was still not in stock. So we had to wait for those. But we fulfilled on time, which was a really, really big goal for us because a lot of Kickstarters do not fulfill on time. So that was really awesome.
Yeah, it's always a challenge. Well, that leads me to another question of how did you decide what your fulfillment timeline was going to be for the Kickstarter?
Yeah, so we pretty much calculated how much we thought we were going to sell, and we calculated how much time it would take for us to make those sales. And then we added 3 months to that because we're like, we definitely want to make sure that we're totally fine. You know, our opening goal was $5,000, and we're like, if we sold $5,000 worth of product, this is how much we'd make. We're like, we're hoping to do, like $8,000 worth of product, and this is how much, etc. it took to do. And then we also we knew that once the Kickstarter ended, we were working with Pledge Manager. There's all sorts of different after Kickstarter survey kits that you can use. And Kickstarter, I think, is actually starting to develop their own. But Kickstarter's after Kickstarter survey thing that they have inside their own website doesn't allow for a lot of options. It's kind of like if I was selling a single option thing, then it'd be really easy to use their software. But for us, we had different types of wood. We also partnered with Die Hard Dice, and we had our own custom Avalor dice created for the Kickstarter that was exclusive to us and all that. So we had trackers, we had the dice, we also made health trackers and armor trackers out of wood as well that people could add on. And then we also did things like if you buy 5 trackers, you'll get a discount, or if you buy 2, you'll get a discount. And that creates a lot of complexity, which was a challenge. So we ended up working with Pledge Manager. Of course, there's a bunch of others. I think BackerKit's another one people use. We chose to use Pledge Manager. So we knew that that was going to take some time to implement, especially with all of the different options that we want. So they had to help us with all that. So we factored about 3 weeks to get that stuff all figured out. And then you have to open up your Pledge Manager and you have to actually get everyone's official orders in. So we assumed that that would take about a month because not everybody, when they get the email, goes and fills out the Pledge Manager right away. A lot of people do, but some people like to wait, or they like to be reminded 10 times before they complete it. So after that, then we figured, okay, well, how long is it going to take to get our supplies? So we added and calculated that, working with our wood supplier to ask them about their timelines, factored that in. And then we factored in the production time that we thought that it would take to do the level that we thought we were going to do. And then we added 3 months to that. And thank heavens we did that, because luckily and wonderfully, we did a lot more than we thought we were going to do, which was awesome. But it was really great that we added those 3 months, because otherwise we were going to be in trouble. So I always think that if you're ever going to want to try to do a Kickstarter, just add a bunch of time to the end of your timeline for fulfillment. And then if you're ahead of schedule and you fulfill early, awesome. but I think it looks really bad on a lot of people when they fulfill really late. And I think it puts a lot of, I don't know, bad thoughts in the backers' minds where they might not trust you as much. And I think trust is one of the biggest things. Like, you have to develop trust with your customers because that's what will make them come back to you, because you want them to come back. So you want them to trust that you're going to be able to fulfill on high quality items and that you're going to fit to some timeline as well. I think it's very important. So we kind of lucked out into fulfilling our timeline, which was really great, but it was definitely hard to choose.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's, again, really good advice on adding that extra time in, because even if everything goes perfectly right, you never know when something like a global pandemic might start.
Also true. Well, and it's actually pretty funny because we actually started our business a month before pandemic hit. So that was insane. We're like, oh, cool, we're starting this small business. And then we're like, oh, this is getting weird. And oh my gosh, everything's shut down. Oh my gosh, we're quarantining, which honestly was super great for starting a business because we were at home. So you might as well work on your business. But I think it was also really rough because there was so much questioning going on in the world. So it was like, are your sales going to be really good because everyone's at home and online shopping? Or is it going to be really rough because a lot of people are going through a really hard time and really being on a budget and they don't want to buy things that are considered extra? And so navigating that, I mean, every week it was kind of a different story. So that was definitely a challenge.
Yeah. How did you guys get through this last year and a half, almost 2 years now?
You just take the lovely lemons that life gets you and you just work really, really, really hard at making lemonade, and you hope that the lemonade tastes good in the end. I think that's pretty much about it. I think when we first started Arcane Spectacles, I think we're like, oh, this is super casual. It'll just be like a fun hobby thing that we do on the side. And then I'm not 100% sure exactly when, but something kind of switched and we're like, man, we really like this. We really want to be serious about this. We want to be intentional. We don't want to just kind of do it. I don't know, maybe 2 months in, and we were just all of a sudden, you were like, man, we're super committed and we're super passionate about it. And I think that passion just makes you want to fight really hard when the times are tough, because running a side business is really, really challenging, especially if you're working at the same time and you're having to manage, working for 40 hours and then coming home and then working on side stuff. I think that if you're starting a small business, you have to have that passion. Otherwise, I think it's just super challenging. And it sometimes with the business, there is a little bit of a grind that goes on, which everyone could tell you with the business. But if you have that passion, then the grind is really fun and enjoyable. And you're like, man, I get to go make 10 trackers today. Like, this is awesome. Where if I didn't like it or if I wasn't passionate about it, it would probably be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to do this stuff when I'd rather like go outside for a walk or something, or play tennis, or I don't know, do something. So it's very fulfilling, but that passion, I think, is definitely what's gotten us through this lovely, amazing last little bit that we've had.
Fair enough. Yeah. I would love to transition a little bit and learn more about how you two split up the business. Like, who does what?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I'm the administrator of the business for sure. I am the person that's making sure all our orders are on track, on time. We know what we need to make. We know the process of what we're doing. Jared is the computer guru. He's the one who tends to make all of our print files now on the laser, all those. He tends to run the machine a lot. I can too if I need to, but he tends to do most of that. They're 3D printed products. We would print them and then we would paint them with a couple different techniques. We'd use some spray paint, some hand painting, some finessed work, and I would usually mostly do all of that. So I kind of run the administration, the banking, the accounts, the paying the taxes, all that fun stuff. I tend to do all that, and I tend to also do the finishing of the product. So Jared tends to get everything at the beginning ready to go, and then I do the finessing, the packaging, the shipping, the taking stuff to the post office. And so it kind of works out well for us because Jared kind of does everything kind of at the beginning, and then I do everything at the end. And so it's nice because we're not switching off and on a ton. Once he's done with the product, it comes to me, and then I just see it through to the end. And I think that's really worked wonders for us to not have to switch back and forth a lot, because that's, I think, when things get lost or mixed up or confused, it keeps it pretty simple. So we're pretty lucky.
I know that you are no longer predominantly on Etsy or on Etsy at all. So I would love to know about the transition. Like, what was the decision to move to selling from your own website, and, you know, what was involved in making that change?
Yes, that was a tough decision to do. We created our own website, arcanespectacles.com. If you want to visit it, we were kind of with the Etsy world. Etsy is amazing, especially if you're first getting started. They help do a lot of stuff for you, especially like they collect sales tax and they submit that on your behalf. That's a very challenging thing to navigate. And they're wonderful because you can post on there. People can make it to your shop just naturally through Etsy. Of course, getting your particular item to show up on like the first 1 or 2 pages for any given search is a very challenging thing that usually requires SEO fine-tuning. And sometimes I swear it's just like luck. Sometimes it's hard to know exactly what gets you to show up sooner. So it's nice because you can get some of that just traffic of people who go to Etsy because they know they want some sort of handmade type product and they're looking for something specific, and then they can find you that way. It's also really nice because you can send people there. What we discovered was, especially most of our stuff is done through Twitter. We were sending a lot of people from Twitter to our Etsy shop. And the one disadvantage with Etsy is that Etsy is full of a lot of other creators. And so a lot of times you'll do a lot of work to get somebody to your shop, and it's not encased. So even on your shop, if somebody's looking at an item, if they're scrolling down, they might see links to items from other people's shops. And then that takes them away from your shop, which is potentially really frustrating because you're like, man, like we got somebody interested in our product to click on a link to make it to our shop, but then it didn't result in a sale. And it's hard to know exactly why that sale didn't happen. It could just be that they weren't interested, or it could be that they didn't want to buy it at the time, but they wanted to look at it. And it's hard to know exactly what's going on. And so to kind of combat that, we decided to make our own website. And that's been really great because we have a lot more flexibility and a lot more control over the way things look, the way we present things. Etsy also has some limitations when it comes to different items that you have. You can't always say, I want this color and I want this letter and I want to type out the words exactly how I want it. And sometimes it can get a little challenging. With our own website, we can put all of those things in on our product to kind of help customize every single product a little bit more. So that kind of gave us an advantage, a reason why we went away from Etsy. And we still do have our Etsy shop live because we did put a lot of time and effort into that. And we do still get sales occasionally coming through there, but we kind of switched our focus away. Another good thing is that we don't Etsy every single time you make a sale or you make a post or listing, they charge you for their services part of it. And so that's kind of nice with our own website because we don't have to charge ourselves those fees. And that's kind of what pushed us to have our own, because we just wanted to be able to offer a little bit more. And we haven't quite gotten the chance to yet, but we really have this idea where we want to be able to highlight other community members that we work with. So, we sponsor a lot of different things. Like we work with Paradise, we work with Nick and Scry Society, we work with Waffles Maple Syrup, we work with all sorts of people, and we want to be able to spotlight them on our website as well. So eventually we're going to have like a community tab to spotlight different people. We want to have kind of a news section where people can go if they want to, I don't know, see almost like blog type posts of like what Arcane Spectacles is up to and what we've been about and doing, and, access to a lot of things. And so that has been wonderful. It's a lot of work to make your own website, but I think it's been worth it. And it's a really tough decision to decide, is it right for you to navigate away from Etsy? Because Etsy does have a lot of benefits and perks. And so at the moment, we're still kind of playing both sides. And it seems it's what's working for us right now.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to continue playing both sides, I guess. And that there is still going to be a little bit of that natural discovery that can come through Etsy. But yeah, like it's really cool that you were able to make that transition into your own site. And I'll say it's a very pretty site.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's definitely hard to decide, what is it going to look like? What color is the banner going to be? What are your colors going to be? Are you going to have just 2 colors, or are you going to have 4 colors? And how's your layout? How are the buttons going to work? It's a lot. But luckily, again, my husband is a brilliant computer genius and a coder, so he can kind of finesse all that and do exactly what he wants, which is amazing.
Yeah, I've been just trying to stumble through like drag and drop things, and it works okay, but one day.
Yeah, for sure. I know we've had some friends, what is it, Wix, I think. They have a drag and drop, but then you can also kind of like code your own stuff in. So we have friends be like, hey, Jared, like, can you help me? I need to do this weird thing. And he's like, yeah, this is how you do it. Here's the code.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I know that y'all recently went through a bit of a rebrand with like the new logo and some really adorable assets that I have seen.
Yes.
So yeah, what was that decision process like?
Yes. So when we first started, we were like, well, we need a business name. And we came up with Arcane Spectacles because we liked the idea of creating magic things that are spectacles, meaning like a really grand, awesome thing to look at. And then we also thought it was funny because we both had glasses. And so we're like, oh, that's a really cute, funny name, Arcane Spectacles. And we decided that we wanted to commission an artwork for my character in our home campaign. Her name is Elza, and she is a wizard. And so we commissioned some art, and we were like, oh my gosh, from Matt Garbunk, I think is how you pronounce it. Anyways, we got it back, and we're like, oh my gosh, we love this. Like, we should make this our logo. Like, that would be amazing. And so we had that for a while. And then after a while, we were kind of like, man, we really want to have a brand identity and something that looks kind of sleek, more modern, but still fits with the theme of what we are. And we just felt like we kind of outgrew it a little bit. And so that's when we have a very good friend. His name's Tanner. He is awesome, and he's super incredible with logo work and really helping you create a brand identity. So we worked very closely with him to decide kind of what we wanted the future of Arcane Spectacles to be. And so that's when he helped us create, after many tries and changes and switches of that one slight little curve. I want it to just be a little slightly different. He was great at accommodating all those things. And we now have our logo, which looks like a hat. And if you look really closely, you'll see that it actually is an A and an S for Arcane Spectacles, which we thought was very clever and cute. And we just decided that it was kind of time for our brand to grow up a little bit, and we, chose some colors, and we chose some fonts to work with as well, and purchased, assets and things to grow that up, which is a wonderful process, but it's always challenging because you're like, I don't know, am I making the right decision? And eventually you just decide to be confident and decide what you think looks really good and achieves the goals that you're trying to achieve. And then you dive all in and you change everything. And then you hope that people still recognize you because you were part of this one brand identity. Now you're something else. And, that visual representation of a brand is really important. And so with our new logo, we think that kind of fits us a little bit better. And we're hoping people know us by that. And they're like, oh, yep, there's the hat. That's Arcane Spectacles. And we don't necessarily have to have our Arcane Spectacles thing on it or whatnot. So it was a big decision to jump, but I'm really glad that we did.
Yeah, I remember seeing a tweet when you pointed out that it was an A and an S in the hat. And I remember exactly thinking like, oh my gosh, that's so clever.
That was definitely Tanner. He's amazing.
That's awesome. Okay, so as we start to wind down a little bit, I know that earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that one of the most challenging things so far has been the knowing how much inventory to stock up. And then I feel like we've mentioned a lot of other challenges too, which is fun because that's actually a question that I love to ask. So I'm going to just go ahead and ask the counter question then about when you look back over the last couple of years as you've been figuring all of this out and getting it off the ground and doing an awesome Kickstarter and making your own website, what would you say has been the most rewarding part?
The most rewarding part for sure has just got to be the wonderful relationships that we've developed, whether that's with our suppliers, our friends that we've made in the TTRPG space, our customers. I think that relationship aspect that you develop with people, I mean, I never would have, I guess, imagined that it could have grown into being what it is. It's very fulfilling, very awesome. And I love that I get to fulfill my days with just making connections with awesome, cool people, doing collaborations with people is that's definitely one of our most amazing favorite things. I've collaborated with Heartbeat Dice and Die Hard Dice and all sorts of creators and streams, and we love that stuff. It's definitely so amazing. And I am so lucky that that's a big perk of job that we've decided to take on. It's definitely my favorite part is the people.
Yeah, there have definitely been so many amazing connections to be found in this community. Mm-hmm. So I'm so glad that y'all have been able to have that and just be such a part of it. And that, that's how I know you. So,
which is great.
Yeah. I know that you just got this fancy new laser engraver and that you are still kind of figuring some things out, but I'm curious if there's any kind of upcoming projects or anything fun that y'all are working on that you're willing to talk about that we haven't necessarily talked about yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with our potion jars, we just recently realized that we can laser etch into our glass for our jars, which is really awesome. So we plan to eventually get around. We're going to laser etch every single one of our jars, which I'm super excited about because we can do cool patterns or we can put helpful things on there like it's, 2d4 plus 2 or 4d4 plus 4, those things that players always forget. How many dice do I roll? How many things do I add? You can put that right on the thing. You can say, here's your potion jar. Just read it and you'll know. Just never ask me again. I think that was a wonderful gift as a DM. So we plan to do that. We actually currently have live some Christmas ornaments that we've created. I know at the moment we're recording this in September, and that feels a little early for holidays, but we're really trying to get some products out for holiday season because last year Christmas season was pretty crazy for us. So we want to get the products that we want lined up ahead of time for holiday season, so we're not having to prototype and do production at the same exact time later on. So if you want Christmas ornaments, we're going to be putting a lot of different designs up for those. We have quite a few already planned out. We just have to get that process of getting them made. And then our most exciting thing that is still pretty secret, we're going to do something along the lines of a storage type thing with our laser engraving techniques and awesome materials and stuff. So that is soon to come, and we're prototyping it, and it's amazing and exciting, and I really wish I could just spill everything about it, but I cannot.
Fair enough. Well, I'm definitely excited to see what that looks like.
Me too. I'm excited for it to come together.
Awesome. Well, Katlyn, this has been such an amazing conversation. If people want to find you and your shop, where should they go?
Yes, we are at arcanespectacles.com if you want to find our shop. You can also find us on Twitter at Arcane Spectacle. We could not fit that S on the very end. We're also on Instagram at Arcane Spectacles. We are also on Facebook if you want to find us there.
Awesome. Well, I will definitely get all of those links in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on today. This has been so fun.
Thank you for having me. This has been wonderful. You are wonderful.
You just finished another episode of Roll, Play, Grow. To check out the show notes from today's episode, you can go to lightheartadventures.com/RPG. To keep up with every episode, please subscribe on your podcast player of choice. And if you're enjoying the show, I would absolutely love if you would leave me a review and share this episode with your friends. Your review might even get featured on an upcoming episode. To follow me on Twitter, you can either find me at lightheartadv for our business account, or at KetraWCR for tweets on gaming, my dog Bowser, and other random shenanigans. You can also find us as Lightheart Adventures on both Instagram and Patreon. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time on Roll, Play, Grow.